As you can see, and I apologize for our technical issues, particularly since I was here at 5:30 testing it, and it worked fine. Sometimes in this business, these things happen. My name's Bill Gleason. I am the co-chair of a town commission or group called the Tree Action Group, and we are tasked by the town with the role of being the town forester. And the town forester, in the state of Connecticut, all decisions regarding trees, official legal decisions, are made by the tree warden of each town. Some towns have a forester, some have commissions. The forestry role is not to take trees down, but to plant them and to plan for the future and to assess the health of the community's trees. And that's exactly what we do. And the commission started about 4 years ago, maybe 5, right on it was in December 5 years ago, but it's really been a going concern for about 4 years. And early on we said that we needed to assess the health of the West Hartford urban tree canopy. And that's where the presentation starts this evening with some, because you'll hear me use these terms, tree canopy, which refers to the percentage of land or acreage in a town that is covered by trees. You have urban tree canopies in cities. Suburban tree canopies would apply. And then you have mildly forested areas and fully forested areas. And those are basically the landscapes that we study. And we got a grant a couple of years ago from about $100,000 from the American Rescue Act that enabled us to create an urban tree canopy study, the first of its kind ever done in West Hartford. And not that many municipalities in Connecticut have done them. Some have, all right. New London, Beth, I believe, has done one. New Haven has done one, and now West Hartford has one. Hartford has done one. The science of exploring and analyzing tree canopies is, okay.
At least they can hear you. There you go.
Okay. There we go. Okay. The science of the technology behind the science of exploring urban tree canopies is only about 20 years old, and it grew out of the satellite business. And we chose, as a town, or TAG chose, to look at 2 different snapshots of West Hartford. The first was in July of 2010. The second was in August of 2023. And these are times, of course, in the middle of the summer when foresters say that the trees are fully leafed out, because that helps the satellites. This is all done from the sky in satellites. That helps the satellites tell what is a tree, what is impervious cover, which is asphalt, homes, what is bare dirt, and then the 4th major category is herbaceous, which essentially is small shrubs and grass. And yes, it also can detect the presence of water. That's not a significant part of West Hartford, 2% of it is. And while we're on that, everything that I'm talking about tonight is the area that we live in West Hartford. It does not include the MDC properties. In 2010, the MDC property was 90% forested. In 2023, it's still 90% forested. And since no one can live there, we excluded it because it skews the numbers of the areas of where we live, skews them higher, and it makes it appear as though we have more trees than we actually do. And so we did the study. We got the data early this year. It took a while to analyze it. It's, as many computer-generated studies are, the data is voluminous, all right? It's a lot to get through. And it also is, if anybody wants to take a look at it, it is public knowledge. And my presentation had the link that you could go to, but it's pgcloud/West Hartford. And you can come up after the presentation and I'll give you a script of paper or something with the exact, so that you can actually see the results of the tree canopy study that was performed for the city of West Hartford. So before I kind of do the reveal on what happened between 2010 and 2023, we have to go back to that tree canopy thing and think about, well, what is a healthy tree canopy? You know, how do you tell, all right? And in essence, for a suburban town, 40 to 60% of its land, if 40 to 60% of its land is covered by trees, that is considered a healthy suburban tree canopy. A healthy downtown urban tree canopy is 15%. A healthy urban residential area is 30%. And then you have the suburban jumping up to 40 to 60. And when it comes to these comparisons, 0 to plus 1, 2, or 3% increase in tree canopy is considered a really good deal for a town, all right, or for an area, because it means that the tree population is healthy, the habitat is good, the trees are growing, and all is well in tree land. If it starts to go down by 2 to 5%, it is a serious concern, because something is happening. Often is the case of development is changing the character of the town, and you're losing a lot of trees. So what a town will do when it's presented with numbers like that, down 3%, down 4%, you say, wow, we better analyze and do other steps to study what's going on with our trees. When it goes anywhere from 5 to 15%, this is catastrophe time, right? This is not a one-alarm fire. This is all fire engines on deck, particularly the higher that number goes. Yes,
all these numbers are the tree canopy. They don't include the ground. I forgot the word you used.
Herbaceous.
Yeah.
Yes, the tree canopy numbers that I'm going to quote you right now, it's a good question, are trees.
So the
Woody plants 15 feet
yeah.
off the ground and
the
above.
herbaceous data doesn't really matter.
The herbaceous data is good to compare it, all right? Because there is another characteristic we get to in part 2 or part 3, which is called PPA, and that is possible planting areas when you get into canopy remediation. Where do you plant your new trees? And that borrows heavily from the herbaceous thing. But for the purpose of the canopy, you're really studying how many trees you got, all right?
If you think of new neighborhoods, that new houses, they have smaller new trees that have developed or
Look at the new buildings in West Hartford Center. You have 2 little cherry trees out in front of it, and that's it. And these are the kinds of things that not only are we looking at, but for the first time we studied it, and we have the scientific evidence to move forward. So once everybody got the benchmarks, all right, for what's a healthy one, 40 to 60%. In 2010, we started with 46%, but which was on the low side of healthy. Okay, we are also as a town on the high side of density. So we were really combining the best of both worlds. Density gives you a tax base to support the town, and yet you still got enough trees that you're in good shape. By 2023, we lost 21% of our tree canopy in West Hartford. 13 years, 21%. Now, since I just gave you the figures, everyone knows, okay, that's the 4-alarm fire, all right? Here's how else you can look at it. If you can envision in your mind what an acre is, all right? Many of you may own 1/4 or 1/2 acre lots in West Hartford. So if it's a 1/4 acre lot, that's 4 houses, all right? Multiply your 4 houses by 114,000, and you get how many trees? If each one of those acres was covered with 100 mature trees, get your arm around it like that, that's what we lost. Approximately 111,000 trees. From 2010, all over the place. Remember, the satellite is studying all 22 square miles of West Hartford, all right? Now, all right, and this is where I'm missing my presentation, I put my property, my little 1/4 acre, and I am one of your neighbors over on Middlebrook Road next to St. Joe's, and I lost. I went from 29% to 22% in that same period of time on my property, which essentially means I lost like 8% of my land, but I lost 25% of my canopy. And it was 2 big trees that came down, yes.
I was just going to ask, was this a choice of taking trees down, or were they diseased or died?
A little of both. I had 3 hemlocks on my property that died because of disease, all right? I removed those in the first October storm. But I also have 26 trees, new trees planted on my property.
So what
But the numbers still went down because I took out big trees and I replaced them with, now they're gonna get big because I'm a big tree kind of person, but it's going to take time. And this scenario is being repeated all around town, all through the Bishop's Corner neighborhood, all through my neighborhood. And it seemed as it was completely democratic. When we first outlined it, you always project, what do you think will happen? And we said, we know that there's going to be a loss. Everybody that had been around town for a while knew that the trees were going away, all right? The purpose of the study was not to confirm, we knew that. The purpose of the study was to say, how many, all right? And what do we need to do to return it to healthy suburban status? Or are we consigned to be a urban residential area with a much lower tree canopy? And the numbers would suggest that that is exactly where West Hartford is headed. So this vision of a leafy, tree-lined streets is kind of falling, when you look at the numbers, is falling by the wayside. It's also falling by the wayside when you drive around the neighborhoods and you come up to a street and there's one old maple left and everything else is just green grass in the front of the street. And so the 21% figure knocked us flat. We really were gobsmacked is a good term in terms of how it just hit us like a brick. You know, we said, wow. So we back, we studied it. The data is accurate. Every single voting district, which is also a school district, lost significant amounts of trees. Every census block lost tremendous amounts of trees. Every zoning category lost significant amounts of trees. In our original forecast, we thought south and southeast, when I say south, southeast, think Home Depot, that section of town, New Park. We thought that would be really light, or that would show quite a bit of tree loss. Yeah, they lost about 18%, slightly under the town average of 21. But our school areas, the Northfelt, up in the northwest part of town, which is really green, all right, Mountain Road and stuff, some of them lost 30%. And then we said, okay, well, is it public land? Is it private land? What is it, all right? Is it parks? Is it schools? And it turns out that managed public land did the best. That is your parks and schools. Why? They had a minimal replacement plan in place, that when a big tree came down, they would replace it, often with another big tree. And so they were about half of the average of the town loss. Same thing with our parks. Public land, Trout Brook Trail, unmanaged public land, of which there is a significant amount, Bugby Forest, the whole part of Westmore over there, lost about the town average. But it was private land, which comprised 80% of the property in West Hartford, lost 30% of its land. And so you have schools down 10, schools and parks down 10, other public land down 20, and private areas down 30. Question. I'm sorry, the lady in the back has. I'll get you, Isaac.
That's private land. Were those home lots?
Yes.
So it was the decisions of individual homeowners?
So this presentation tonight is in 3 parts, all right? The first part is the loss, which I just explained. The second part is why. And I'm going to address it, and I don't want to jump ahead to why, all right? And then the third part is the solution. And there's a little time, I budgeted time within each one so that we could have questions about that particular topic before we moved on to the next one, all right? Does that work for, okay. And then Isaac, how about you?
You're getting to it.
Yeah, okay, very good. All right. And so, where were we? 20%? 30% of the private property. And it was dramatic. And the new computer models and stuff that we have in our public knowledge, anyone can look it up, will show you your individual property and the percentage of trees that you had in 2010 and the percentage of trees that you had in 2023. And then that generates a raw data number, which you then just use some simple division to figure out whether it was 10%, 20%, 30% of your trees. And you will be pretty shocked. My next door neighbor lost 85% of the trees. And the neighbor on my backyard fence on North Quaker Lane lost 100% of its trees in February. It went from having 34 healthy trees to 0. And we do not know what is going to happen with the property. There have been no plans or announcements and things. And as you drive around town, it seems as though the sound of chainsaws is almost omnipresent. And the old trees, which defined our neighborhoods, are largely disappearing. And so with that, how about questions about the loss or the technology that allowed us to figure that out, and then we'll move on to the second part. Everybody good? Yes.
So if someone has on the property line some trees, or let's say a row of hemlock or
Sure. Arbor vitae, whatever.
determine whose property it
Tree fights are a common part of land ownership in not only West Hartford, but any place where there's houses. And there are trees which are right on the property line, and there are a lot of rules. The far more frequent one is the large tree where the canopy overhangs on the other person. The tree is clearly on my property, but overhangs, 40% of the tree overhangs my neighbor's property. The neighbor does have the legal right to trim that tree, the air above that property, but does not have the legal responsibility to come on my property and cut it down, right? And for purposes of this study, the technology behind it is also an emerging technology called GIS, Geographic Information System stuff. You use it every day when you use your phone to get directions or to find out where a restaurant is in the center or something like that. But few people know what it is, all right? But it's remapping our world. The earliest days, you can go back in West Hartford and see these kind of hand-drawn maps. The ones today are huge computer files that have elevation, water, all this information in it. And so what the satellite does is it takes the picture of it and says, okay, based on density, and then we give them a map that says this is our parcels in town, which is your property and my property and everyone else's property. And then it puts those, it uses that as a matrix to divide it. So if I have the big tree and my neighbor has 40% of the canopy, they get credit for the 40%, I get credit for the 60%. It's the tree canopy on your property.
It's amazing, the technology.
The technology, and there was certainly a learning curve. I've been a statistics guy most of my life, but I had to hit the books a little bit to come up to speed on this GIS and ArcGIS stuff. But once you get in, everything makes sense, right? It's just, I guess it's the pace of technology. We're happy that our phone can do it, but we don't look too deep into how your phone gets you from one point to another. But, and what we're doing is we're using that technology to try and make our town a better place. So, and then part two is the why. Why did all these trees come down? And the first, I broke it down into 3 reasons. There are many, many reasons why the trees came down, but I broke it down into, the first one I call aging neighborhoods equals aging trees. And the slides that I would have shown you, and it's a fabulous set of maps that are in the town's website that start in 1900 and 1910, 20, 30, and every decade they show you how many homes or how many parcels of land were developed. And in 1900 through 1920, it looks like you could count the homes in West Hartford and the businesses in West Hartford on a couple of hands. It was farmland. We have 1934 aerial photographs that I was going to show you of Bishop's Corner, from Bishop's Corner, which does not exist, right? There were a few buildings, but there was no 4 gas stations, Lord and Taylor in the old days. The Bishop's Corner that we know did not exist. And all the way up to Mountain Road, there's nothing there. The development behind Bishop's Corner, the houses that are there, no, right? So then you track it. So, okay, this is 1920, farmland. We were supporting a lot of the horses and people in the city of Hartford. In 1900, there were 3 horses for every citizen in Hartford, which means a lot of hay. And when you put in a lot of hay, you generally end up with an awful lot of the other end of the hay process. But the automobile changed all that. And in many ways, the automobile, the coming of the automotive era, developed West Hartford. First, the East End by 1940 was the second slide. The east side of town, where I live, all right, is pretty developed by then. And these are the houses that were built in the 20s, the 30s, and then it stopped for World War II. So, but the other parts of town are also still. Post-World War II, 50s and 60s, that's where those neighborhoods developed. By 1970, West Hartford is as developed almost as it is today. And from 1970 to 2020, our census of people hasn't changed that much either. It was 64,000 in 1970. It jumped briefly in 1980 to 71, then went right back down to 65, and I think it's 63 and change right now. So it was built out in 1970. Now, long story short, what's that mean? It means that all those neighborhoods, when we started with farmland, believe me, the farmers were tight. They only would have pasture trees for cattle or horses to sit under the shade, or if you saw a patch of trees, that meant there was water there and you couldn't farm it. Everything else, if you could farm it, there was no trees on it in West Hartford. We had a really, really low tree canopy. Then the development started, and the developers planted, and so did the residents, planted large, or they planted small trees, but they were maples and oaks and hickories. And these were going to be the trees that determined the future character of West Hartford. So the east end of West Hartford by 1960 was pretty woody, right? And then by the year 2000, the other areas that had developed later were also, and that's where we probably hit the highest percentage of tree canopy that West Hartford had seen in since the first settlers cleared it. It was a forest when it started. Forest and meadow was West Hartford. The farmers, the early farmers, cleared it. The farming dates back, the deeds date back to the late 1600s. So they cleared the land with people and axes and oxen. Tough way, but, and it stayed that way for a long time. And then my best estimate is that we probably got to about 52 or 53%. And then all these maples, all these silver maples, if you've ever owned a silver maple, you'll realize that it has a very, very short, for a tree, lifespan. Hickories will hang around for a couple hundred years. Oaks for a couple hundred years. The older birches, not the white and the river birches, but the older birches, yellow and sweet birch, they call it, that lasts 250 years. Those trees are still around from some of the early pastures that we had in West Hartford. And we go out and look for them and find them. But largely, right, the 100-year mark for trees, particularly in developed areas where the developers planted fast-growing trees, means you are at a turning point or a tripping point that we've never seen as a town. All of our old trees kind of got old at the same time. And it's a nursing home for trees. And a storm comes along, what happens? The old trees are not healthy, right? A 90-year-old tree can be incredibly healthy and stand up to a really, really tough storm. But then it gets to be 100, 105. Because think about it, if your home was built in 1930, it's 95 years old. And if anybody planted a silver maple on it, that silver maple probably had to come down 20 years ago. And if it's there today, it probably needs to come down. But we've never faced this as a town. All these trees getting old. I grew up in Hartford. I did leave for 30 years, which gave me a different perspective. When I came back, streets that I knew as tree-lined had no trees on them. So, I mean, this has been going on for a while. Aging neighborhoods, aging trees. It's a natural cycle. And, but the occurrence of it in tandem with when our neighborhoods developed is what is creating this massive 21% of trees all coming down in a relatively short period of time. Number two, storms. And everyone says, hey, the October storm. And the October storm was a mess. If you went outside at 10:30 at night, they all started cracking and falling at the same time, all right? I mean, this was just the weight of the ice, all right? Reached a critical point on so many trees, and it sounded like people were firing off guns. I mean, it was loud and noisy, and don't stay outside too long in that storm.
Because the leaves were still on the trees.
And the leaves were still on the trees, which gave it a greater volume of ice, which contributed to, and it's a reason, incidentally, why trees drop their leaves in the wintertime. They don't want to try and support all that ice and snow because there is a physical breaking point. Conifers, which do keep their needles, they have an entirely different way of dealing with that, don't they? Their shape is different. They're not out like that, they're like this. So they're designed to go through winter. Deciduous trees are not. And every once in a while you get caught with a storm. The second storm, 2021 was, I think 2021, Isaias, Tropical Storm Isaias. Wasn't a bad storm as storms go, but it generated 50 to 70 mile an hour tropical winds. And again, it was a summer storm. And 70 mile an hour wind in the winter, no big deal, all right? 70 mile an hour wind in the summer, leaves on the trees, big deal, all right? And so you say, okay, these two storms, and many people want to assign all the blame for the trees coming down to the storms. That is absolutely inaccurate. If you go back through the history of Connecticut, I grew up listening to my grandfather talking about, in Hartford they called it the flood of 38. If you lived in Farmington, it would have been the hurricane of Hartford flooded. Every place else got the wind damage. Winding Trails, if you're familiar with Winding Trails, lost 94% of its pine trees in 1938. Wow. You go there today, it's hard to believe, all right? But it was
What happened?
wind. Came in and knocked all the only ones that survived were the little ones, the saplings in the forest that weren't crushed by the big trees coming down. And then you go 1955, two hurricanes a week apart, Connie and Diane. Then you come up through Hurricane Sandy, and the slides told the whole story. It seems like every 20 years or 15 years there was a major hurricane event. And so what made Isaias and the October storm different than all the ones that preceded it? And that comes to the major reason why trees came down, or why we lost our canopy. And that reason is failure to replant. Failure to replant. There was a massive replanting plan after 1938, massive replanting efforts after 1955, Connie and Diane, massive after Sandy. What was different about our two storms was they weren't remembered as deforestation events. We weren't looking at trees. We were looking at buying generators because we were out of power for 10 days. And in fact, trees were actually blamed by the power company, right? And that was one of the biggest boondoggles of all time, because the power companies had not maintained the trees along the electrical grid for 30 years. And along comes a storm and knocks it down and takes the electricity out, and they say, oh, it was the tree's fault, all right? It wasn't the tree's fault, all right? The tree just did what the tree did, all right? But it did take a lot of heat off of the power companies. And so how these things, and then the other secondary reasons that creep into, so the first three, because I'm kind of recapping now, aging neighborhoods equals aging trees. Second is storms, but storms accelerated the damage. They were not the cause of the damage. And then the failure to replant is the one that you really need to keep in your head and say, wow, yeah, we lost trees on our property, and if an oak tree came down, we did plant, but we planted a dogwood. And that's not our native environment, right? The scientific name for a dogwood tree is Cornus florida, all right? And it's in reference to its southern upbringing, all right? If we want a healthy environment for the town of West Hartford, we need to plant the native trees that were here before we cut them all down and made it farmland. And they are the hardiest and the strongest trees that grow in this environment. So it makes perfect sense not to run out and spend $700 on a tree from Asia or Europe or some other non-American tree, non-native tree, when you could spend a fraction of that amount and get a maple, an oak, a hickory, and any other number, a hornbeam, a hop hornbeam, any number of wonderful native trees that will last another 100 years. There are people in town that have said, I don't like the leaf bagging thing, so I'm taking my trees down. So what? But I've also been told, my insurance broker said that they would not give me homeowners insurance because I have large trees on my property. I said, I would really like to know the name of that insurance company because I'd like to give them a call as the town forester and wonder if that is their official policy, or if someone's playing loose with healthy trees are fine, right? Now, to be fair, and this is almost the introduction to the third section, there is, when 100 years ago, when our neighborhoods, some of the older neighborhoods were started, 1920s, 30s, they did plant very large trees in the front yard. We had a case in West Hartford, down by the Hartford line, where the tree warden called and said, do you know anything about the big sycamore down there? I said, yeah, I know that tree well. The tree predates electricity. It's a big, big American sycamore tree. There's two of them. And I mean big, all right? And Eversource wanted to cut it down because the power line was running through the tree. Tree's perfectly healthy. And I measured it and said, John, this tree predates when Hartford was electrified. The tree was there. Whatever the power company was ran that line through the tree when West Hartford was. If they want to protect the power line, have them move the thing across the street and leave the tree alone. And that's what he did, all right? They have not moved the power lines, but they did not take down the tree. And this is the politics of tree preservation and tree action. So Multiple reasons why trees came down, but I did want to highlight the first three, and particularly the failure to replant. Yes?
Well, in my neighborhood, solar salesmen would come and they would offer to put solar on your roof, but they would say you have to cut down that tree because it's shading your house.
That is
So-
correct. And
I'd rather have the shade from the tree, but, you know.
so
a lot of people
to
chose-
put solar on our home, we were looking to minimize our carbon footprint. Little did we know, they told us it would be 7 years and you'll get your money back and everything. We thought that was part of the sales spiel. More than anything else, we did it because we wanted to lower our carbon footprint. And you can agree with that or not agree with it, but that was our motivation. But the first thing they do is they study. And they said, well, you know, this tree could come down and it would improve your efficiency. And I said, that tree is not coming down until it has to come down. And it's at least 50 years from that particular point of view. I said, put on another panel. That should make you happy because I have to pay for the additional panel. I'll get the electricity that I want. My tree will be okay. And everybody can go home happy. But if I had said, yeah, call the arborist. Arborists rarely say, that tree is healthy, I'm not taking it down. They pretty much just say, hey, will the check clear? And that's their business. Any questions about the second part? The reasons why trees in West Hartford came down? Yes, Isaac?
Well, this may be getting into the third part, but
Okay. You're a good step ahead of me most of the way, which is fine.
has the analysis been done looking at private properties versus public land, like for public areas? And like one area that I've been told is supposed to be positive for the trees is, the redevelopment of the south.
Oh, okay.
I'm curious about that, or what the take is on that.
All right, so the first part of it is we have the gross information about, okay, so for example, the parcel that Home Depot is located on, I'm just pulling Home Depot out of the air. We know exactly how much canopy they had. In 2010, they had that little area that was going to be a dog park. It's got nice mature trees in it. And we know in 2023. And they lost around town average. So kind of whatever happened in town happened there in equal amounts. And so we know it by individual property. And then we know it in broad strokes. We know that private land lost more than public. We did not aggregate public land and add it all together, all right?
I guess I was asking because of this concept of not replanting, like had West Hartford not been planted with all this loss of trees.
So, I mean, the thing that protected, the things that give schools and parks the edge is they replanted.
They did.
I mean, it was not, maybe the species selection was not what we would consider it the proper way to go now, but I am not going to cast stones at somebody who planted a tree 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Good for you. Thanks for replanting. And focus our efforts on moving forward too. And then what was the last part, Isaac, that you were also? Oh, the trees on LaSalle Road.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is, boy, the tree needs, the town needs to up its public relations efforts a little bit.
Yeah.
This is win-win for the town, for the residents of the town. We did an inventory. That's another thing that we do as TAG. We go around and inventory the trees. It was a rather simple inventory to conduct in West Hartford Center because there was 92 honey locust trees, all planted at the same time, all different sizes, which is simply how trees grow and how much access they have to water and light and everything else. But they were all planted at the same time. And that broke about 50 rules in the forestry handbook, all right? Because if one blight comes in that attacks the honey locust trees, you lose every tree in West Hartford Center. But that didn't happen for 60 years. They were planted in what would be the harshest prison conditions for a tree, a 4 by 4 foot square of dirt, all right, where they had to fight for nutrients, fight for water, and when they started growing, roots. I don't want to turn it into a tree talk, all right. Roots need air, all right. That's why most of your tree roots are pretty close to the surface. So when these honey locusts, they're struggling to stay alive and grow, and so what do? They're flexing their root muscles so they can get, and they uplift the sidewalk. And when the sidewalk gets uplifted, they get the air that they need to survive, all right, until a young mom pushes the stroller into it, all right, at which point City Hall gets the phone call and bam, so it's like, oh, wait a minute. We got the wrong trees, we got too many of them, but we have a new redevelopment plan. And they did come and we said, these are our thoughts as the town forester on the way to go. The 92 that are there will be removed in this year and next year. LaSalle is done. They then instituted the best system for planting trees, and West Hartford Center is an urban environment, not a suburb. We're a suburb, but the center itself is classified as urban. So what they do, if you might have seen it on LaSalle Road, they were digging these deep pits, and they're putting like what looked like black milk crates in them. And it's a thing called a soil cell. The more technical term is a silva cell. And they are filled with dirt. And then there'll be a top on the, I think it's 5 feet by 5 foot section that is also a water filter. And there is an air space under those new sidewalks, which means that the roots go down, they grow out as they normally should, and they'll get into the subterranean soil as far as they want. But the central area will still have plenty of air to breathe. And it will be 136 replacement trees for the 92 that came down. And it is 5 different species of trees, all native. And so a balanced approach. And I really think that the town deserves a well done on it. And most people are like, you see what they're doing to those trees on LaSalle Road? And I'm like, well, they were gonna come down anyways. Maybe when your car was parked under it, maybe not. They had reached the sell-by date on the honey locusts. And I think we probably should have had, when the Charter Oak came down in the 1850s, they had a party and a memorial service for the Charter Oak in Hartford. We should have had a memorial service or a party for the honey locusts in West Hartford Center. They did 60 years of tough duty for our town. So how about, any other questions on?
No, it's good to hear.
Okay, good. Good question too, by the way. I was hoping somebody would bring up LaSalle. The solution is quite easy. Plant, plant, plant. And we have several initiatives that we are, and we need everybody's help and support in doing it. The town should lead on public land. The town should lead in helping private businesses. If they are of a right mind, we're on a project with Triumph down in that same part of town over there by the Charter Oak School that is very, very interested in redoing their property, reclaiming some. Those large manufacturing complexes down there are not going to be using those parking lots in the future. We're trying to talk them into making it greener space. And what can the town do to help them accomplish that? I don't know how successful we'll be, but the effort is there. We will repeat the urban tree canopy study every 5 years so that we will have and it's already scheduled for 2029, because the first one was done, 2028, which give us a 5-year benchmark against where we were in 2023. We can share with you that there is no way we can replant enough trees in 5 years to reverse the negative number going down. This is a long-term, multi-year initiative that's going to require planting in parks, planting at schools, planting in general purpose areas, and a huge involvement from the private sector to plant on their properties as well. And we're developing the guidelines and things that to not make some of the mistakes with large trees in the front yard that were made 100 years ago. And we can do that, all right? There are trees that are appropriate. Foundation trees are the oaks, large maples, hickories that I mentioned earlier. Those go in the back of the property typically, or on a shared border, far enough away from the house so that the heaviest parts of the tree would never touch the tree if it came down. And those are called foundation trees. And when you look at your property, you say, okay, that area back there, could I plant some trees? Talk to your neighbor across the fence. Put some on both sides. Then you have medium trees, black tupelos, whole assortment of wonderful native trees that only get to be about 50 feet tall. Those you can move a little bit closer to the house, not too close. They're also appropriate for the front yards of trees on non-power line sides of the street. But for the folks on the power line, we generally are going to recommend that they stay with what we call small trees. Red buds, the ones that turn that pretty purple color in the spring. Honey locust, not honey locust is a medium-sized tree. Witch hazel is another favorite small tree. 20 to 25 feet tall, easy to care, pretty free of pests, makes for a very, very attractive front yard, and particularly when they're put into, not, when I say containers, I don't mean a big container like that. I mean a stone border or a wood border with wood chips inside it. And the goal is to get rid of grass and replace it with trees. That's the return to the forest environment, the healthy environment that we once had. Grass does essentially nothing except use pesticides and doesn't really support much. I see a question.
I can think of some. You just outlined a few benefits of having a higher tree canopy in a semi-urban or suburban environment here, like wind protection for the house, shade, water runoff, less use of pesticides. But there must be some others, bigger ones that I'm not thinking of in terms of having a higher.
So the major contribution, all right, let's just take one of those categories, shade. We tend to think of shade in our terms, that it cools us and it cools our homes, all right? A tree or the environment out there, right, does not think in terms of trees as cooling their home, all right, or cooling our homes. What they are doing is that they are cooling the environment. When you have a bare lawn, right, that is sun beating down on it all day long, it supports about 6 to 8 species of insects and very little other life, all right? Because it can't, all right? The sun is beating down on it all day long. A tree, an oak tree, all right, could support between what's underneath, and it's particularly if its leaf litter is there. If we, instead of carting them off to the dump, we left our leaves there or mulched them and put them back. If that's there, an oak tree supports 400 different species of insects, mammals, birds, and this is what I love to tell people and share with people. No trees is not so much of a big deal. I said, how about birds? They said, no, we have to have birds, right? Yeah, well, no trees, no birds, okay? Because no trees, no caterpillars. And a lot of species of birds can only feed their young caterpillars. They cannot eat seeds and regurgitate the food and feed it to their chicks, the chicks will die. So when you see somebody taking down a tree, I always like to think, oh man, there goes a few more birds or a few more bird species. And if it keeps going, and that's the difference from looking at it from a kind of a human-centric way, it's going to fall on my house. No, what about what it's going to do in its natural area, all right? It's going to pay benefits for all of the future generations. And the best, there was a guy that wrote a poem about it, and he said, the meaning of life is to plant a tree under whose shade you will not sit. And that's a lot of kind of the task that we're faced with West Hartford. I'm going to keep planting trees, and I'm not going to sit under the shade of a lot of them, all right? And I'm energized by that process, all right? And part of today's meeting and get-together was to see if you want to get energized about that process and look at your property, see whether you can plant, all right? Or join with your neighbors or the neighborhood association, Jason, which I talked with Signa about, talking to the folks that own the center and saying, what can be done to put some more trees here? I saw the big tear up on the back end of the lower end of Bishop's Plaza there, and I didn't see any planters going in. I saw lots of asphalt, but no planters. Yes?
Is there a connection here to the West Hartford Tree Project?
Yes, there is. And that's where we're going right next, okay? So even without our slides, we're all hitting on the, this was definitely an opportunity to showcase the West Hartford Tree Project. It is a grassroots organization that was started 6 years ago and has been distributing trees free of charge to West Hartford residents for 5 years. It was started by 2 science teachers, one at Hall and one at Sedgwick. Ted and Carolyn Gerner are their names. They have since moved, I think Carolyn is still teaching at Hall, but they recently moved to Bloomfield. The other 3 parts of the management team for the West Hartford Tree Project are Tom and Rachel Martin, who wanted to be here but had a conflict with their kids at Duffy, parent-teacher kind of thing, and I was the 5th. And so I'm carrying the water pail tonight. And this is how the West Hartford, they have given away 8,000 trees to West Hartford residents in 5 years. And from my role as chair or co-chair of TAG, all right, we want to increase those tree planting events and have 2 a year, all right, to give residents a chance to buy native trees or to get native trees for free. The West Hartford Tree Project will remain free. And I have sign-up sheets tonight if anybody wants to sign up via email. Their primary communication is done via Facebook. We never got around to doing a website for them. And although that might be in the future with these new initiatives, and you can go on Facebook and just go to West Hartford Tree Project, follow them, and it'll come in on your Facebook feed. If you're not a Facebook person, but you have an email, please leave your name and your email, and I'll make sure that Tom and Rachel get it. And we do a community funding thing in, I think it usually starts in late November, right around Thanksgiving time, kind of a traditional gift-giving time in early December. And they ask for donations. The people that donate do get first whack at a week or so at trees. There's a limit of 4 trees per property. But the donors, it's kind of funny. The donors don't, they've already gotten their trees, and so they're just kind of community gifting, okay? And we're very grateful for it, and I'm one of them, okay? I still buy trees, but I don't use West Hartford Tree Project trees, and I donate annually to the West Hartford Tree Project because I want to get free trees in the hands of residents. And if we give out 1,500, maybe 150 are to donors, and the rest of them are to residents who have never donated. Now, they might donate a year later, who knows? But that's how it works. And then planting, or what we call distribution day, is done annually on the weekend around Arbor Day. Not Earth Day, Arbor Day, which is usually late April, which happens to be my birthday, so I can remember that. And that's a great time to plant trees. Avoid planting, spring is a great time to plant a tree, so is fall. Avoid the dog days of summer. The July and August, those 3 weeks, last 3 weeks of July, first 3 weeks in August. When it starts to cool down in August nights, then put your tree in the ground. If the tree is healthy, it really doesn't make any difference. It's intended to stay outside 365 days out of the year. So people say, hey, how late can I plant? If you can dig the ground, you can probably plant a tree well into the end of October. And I've put a few in the ground in November and had no issues with it whatsoever. So there's that sign-up sheet. And then there is also another card if you would like your property analyzed. If you leave me a name and an email address with your address, I will send you back an email about your own specific property and give you the dates of it. I didn't do anything, did I?
You did.
Oh, okay. Okay. Always interesting. And so with that, again, my thank you to all of you for coming. I again apologize for the technology issue. Something is happening with Windows, and I just discovered it on that computer when I returned from Canada last night. And I thought we had resolved it, and I thank you, our host, for your help with it. And final questions, and then we're good. Yes?
So, towns in Connecticut have to do a plan of conservation and development.
Correct.
Where is West Hartford in terms of its current, do you know where they are in their plan? Because something like this should be part of the plan of conservation and development, not necessarily mandating tree planting by zoning, but making it a priority for the town. It is a plan of conservation and development.
Yeah.
And, a spokesperson from your group should be weighing in. Now, it could be they just did a plan of conservation and development and the timing is not right, but is that something that you could?
It is, so there is sustainability, and each town in Connecticut strives for certain levels of sustainability, and they award badges, platinum, gold, whatever. West Hartford is, I believe, in the highest category for sustainability.
They are, and that's
But,
wonderful.
right, but the conservation plan, right, is different, and that tends to focus more on development rather than conservation. And that's why the information that I'm sharing, this is the first public release of this information, because our final plan, the final report, is being finalized as this meeting takes place, all right? And when that plan is finalized and available to the public, that's the trigger that we use to take the message to a larger public and to figure out. So I did do the first part of this presentation to the town council about the loss. And they were pretty, it was supposed to be a segment of the town council, but the mayor and everybody else decided to jump onto the Zoom call. So they all heard it, and they're looking forward to getting it, because West Hartford hasn't really thought, we didn't really think we had a tree problem. We knew we were losing some trees, but nobody was talking about it in the terms that I talked about it tonight. And it is a serious concern, right? And we do not want to go, we don't want to go all crazy, crisis, because media is dominated by the crisis of the day, the week, the month, whatever it might be. We have to look at this and say, wait a minute, we're losing a very, very valuable asset, our trees, and what do we need to do as a town to combat it? And you know that, I mean, I can speak for myself, that if they come and say, well, we should apply for federal grants to get trees, I said, no, no, no. I am, in addition to being a neighbor of yours, I'm also a fellow taxpayer, and I want to know how many of those shekels are going to be coming back into our community to, I mean, if half of a school fell down, they would fix it. Well, 111,000 trees disappeared, many of them on public land. And it gets worse, all right? Because this inventory project that our group is also doing, we'll go to a school and inventory every single tree on the property. Then we put it in the computer and it comes back and it says, there is a formula, an algorithm that says you should have, in order to have a healthy environment, you should have for this 3-acre parcel that the school sits on, you should have 125 trees. And X percentage of them should be this big, this big, this big, this small, this very small. And then you'll have a self-renewing, sustaining, just like your community is. Got old people, folks in the middle, and very, very young people. And that's the self-renewing. Every school that we've done so far, and it's 7 of them, 7 or 9 of them, comes back the same thing. Same nursing home story. Way too many trees 30 inches in diameter and above. Way too many trees 24 inches. Usually okay right in the middle, and then huge deficits in small trees and new plantings, which essentially means we haven't planted trees for 20 years because we let the old trees do their job. But they're going to come down. And as a town, we need to think proactively about how we can all pitch in and leave a West Hartford, when we leave West Hartford, as a place that is better engineered for trees in the future. And that could be a really, really good gift that we could pass on to the next generations that will be living in and running this town. So with that, if there are no more questions, I thank you all again. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much